everyone, and welcome to Lindell's Online University. I would like to begin by thanking you for taking a training course with our university. Today's training is going to focus on the Instructor Led Training Module number 1. If you are new to the ILT, then this is the training for you. This training is going to review the basics of the ILT and help you become familiar with many of the components that you will need to know in order for you to be able to set up your ILT training modules. After we have completed this presentation, your next training will be a more in-depth demonstration on setting up and preparing your ILT course. This is a separate step-by-step course that you will need to register for. In today's presentation, we will be going over our course objectives, and I will be presenting an introduction to setting up your ILT. I will identify a checklist and a breakdown of all the information you are going to need prior to setting up your instructor-led training. I will also illustrate what the structure of the ILT needs to look like, and I will break down each of its components and explain what they each mean. We will do a quick review of the EHRI codes, and I will go over how they relate to your ILT modules. And finally, we will go over our naming conventions and why it is so important to be aware of how you name your ILT courses and the components that make up your training. Our main course objective today is to understand what the ILT is. We will focus on how to set up your ILT modules using the components in your instructor-led training, such as your events, tracks, and sessions. You will learn the do's and don'ts of naming your modules and your components, and you will learn the fundamentals of enrolling your learners. We will begin with an introduction to instructor-led training. Online University allows you the opportunity to set up a module for any training you wish to conduct. The module represents the framework for your course. Within the ILT module, there are a few things you need to do. You will set up your courses, assign instructors, set up your locations for the training, set up any assignments, quizzes, prerequisites needed, and enrollments, as well as setting up the time and dates your courses will be available. It is important before going into Online University and setting up your ILT modules that you take the time to gather information you are going to need for setting up that module. The next slide is going to review those items. Let's review all the information you need to decide on before setting up your ILT. You'll need the location where your class will be taking place. That includes the physical location to include address and room number. You'll need to have decided who the instructor is going to be and ensure they have the needed permission for conducting the ILT training. You will need to decide if you are going to need any resources or assets for the courses you are developing. These can include any equipment such as laptop, projectors, overheads and handouts, books, or maybe prerequisite reading. And these are only a few. You will have to decide how you are going to set up your ILT module, and we will discuss examples shortly. You will need to have a naming convention to your ILT modules. Then you will need to have a list of dates and times for your sessions. And finally, you'll need a list of enrollees and who will be participating in the training. Where is the training going to take place? You're going to need the following information: building, floor, and room number. Once created and saved, you can access this location and enter it into your ILT session. You may want to also provide a link to maps, an image, and/or directions for your location. Now you will need to decide on your instructor. Is your instructor going to be an internal employee or an external source? If your instructor is not already registered in the system, you must enter your new instructor's information. You are also going to need certain permissions given to your instructor so that they can manipulate the ILT. Resources can be very important to a training. For your ILT, you'll want to create an outline for your learners. Learners always like to know what they will be learning and why it is important to them, as well as how it's going to relate to their current position. If you will be using any assignments or study guides, it will be a good idea to have these ready before setting up your ILT. You may want to forward these items to your enrollees as they are registering for class. You'll also want to have your PowerPoint or any other form of presentation you will be using prepared and ready for downloading into the ILT. If you are going to have any quizzes, it would be a good idea to have these ready. You can insert them into the ILT for storage and then access them later when you are ready to administer your quiz. Enrolling is the process of registering your learners for an ILT session. You can set up your enrollment to be either optional or mandatory, where they have a choice for taking the training, or self-enrolled or requiring approval. Self-enrollment allows for open enrollment into the session. Supervisor approval is just that. Before a learner can be registered for a session, they will need the approval from their supervisor. Each ILT session you set up will have its own enrollment, separate from any other session you create. Remember, a session is the dates and times you are providing training. ILT structure. Your ILT can be organized by location, by audience, or by topic. That is a decision you will need to make. Before you set up your instructor-led training, you need to understand the structure of the ILT model. The ILT model is structured into 3 levels: events, tracks, and sessions. They must be created in this order. The first level of the ILT is the event. Events are generally the name of the class or topic you will be presenting or teaching. An event represents the location where you're going to keep all of your course records. Think of an event like a file cabinet or a storage closet. This is where you put things away to be stored or saved for later use. You hang your files with their description tabs so you know what subject is being stored in that hanging file, and then you store the individual documents that pertain to that subject matter. An example of an event name would be Region 2. The second level of an ILT is the track level. Think of a track as a file drawer of a cabinet where you are going to be storing the information for each of your sessions. Each class is going to have their own track or drawer. The track is a drawer in your cabinet where you're going to store the file session for the course, each drawer representing a different course. A track can hold multiple sessions. An example of a track name would be New Employee Orientation, NEO Region 2. The third and final level of an ILT is the sessions level. The sessions represents the date and time of your ILT event or track, depending on how you set up your ILT. Think of the session as the individual hanging file in your drawer that will need to be set up for each individual class you will be conducting for your course. The session will need to specify the location, the instructor, and any assets such as quizzes, assignments, and any other material you will need for your course. An example of a session name would be Session 1, NEO Region 2, March 31st, 2013 from 8 to 9 a.m. Components for your ILT. Now we are going to take a look at 2 options for breaking down your ILT modules so that they work better for your specific needs. Let's begin by explaining the ILT components. Your ILT can be organized dependent upon how your department will be using the ILT model. Option 1 would be to set up your ILT by region or department. An example would be as follows. The event is the region for your department. Track is the course name, and your session is the subject and the class to be conducted. Or option 2 would be to set up your ILT by using an actual course. An example would be as follows. The event is the course, such as Microsoft. Your track is the topic, Excel, and the session is the date and time for the Excel class. I recommend categorizing your events by your region or department. This will help minimize the amount of information that is inputted into the LMS system. Giving your region or department its own file where you will contain all of your courses and classes within one folder. However you choose to categorize your event is totally up to you, but it must be consistent across the board. This will make locating information in the future much easier. Now let's take a closer look at the 2 options. In using option number 1, we are setting the event level to be your region or department name. The track level represents the courses being offered at your region, such as New Employee Orientation. Your session is a list of days and times the courses will be available. Monday, April 14th at 8 a.m. And the final level for any of the options is going to be your enrollments, which we will discuss a little later. In using option number 2, we are setting up our track from option number 1, New Employee Orientation, as our event. What we are doing is creating the same event but for different regions or departments. Our track is now going to represent the different regions or department names within our organization. Each track will have its own session with its own list of enrollees. You'll notice that this change really doesn't affect your sessions. Each track will still have its own session dates and times. ILT sessions. ILT sessions will be organized in the track you have set up, which will be stored in your ILT event folder. Your session will include the following information: start and end dates, time, location and room, instructors, minimum and maximum seating, prerequisites, outline, enrollees, and any other attachments. Custom fields in the Sessions section. When you create your session, you will need to know your EHRI codes, and that is what we are looking at here. These are many custom fields you will need to complete under each session. Here I present a standard for completing this form. It can change depending on your specific needs and requirements. Please take notice of the first two items, training type code and training subtype code. It is here that the codes will be used under the session's setup when entering information into the Custom Fields section, where you will be required to define your training types and the correlating subtypes that go with them. Training types are broken into 3 different categories, and under each category there are subtypes. It is important when setting up your sessions that you match the correct training type code with its corresponding training subtype code. EHRI codes are important when setting up your sessions. It is this information that will flow over to the HRIS system. On the screen you see the 3 main training types: Training Program Area, Basic Training Area, and Developmental Area. You also see their respective subtypes. The key to remember when entering this information is, when you select the training type, you can only use the subtype that falls under the training type category you have chosen. For example, if you select the training type code Basic Training Area, then your subtype code must be one of the following: Adult Basic Education, Agency-Specific Required Training, Basic Computer Training, Employee Orientation, Federally Mandated Training, Soft Skills, or Work Life. Otherwise, when the system links up with the HRIS, the information will not flow over correctly. When you go into HRIS to see if any individual has received credit for taking a course, it will not appear because you have not entered the correct training type with its associated subtype. This information can also be found on the SF-182 form. Here is a look at the first page of the SF-182 form. Here's where you will enter trainee information, training course data, and cost and billing information. You will also be entering the training type code and the training subtype codes. On page 10 of the SF-182 form, you will find the training types and definitions of the subtypes that correspond with the training type you have selected. To the right of the training type is a partial list of the subtypes that correspond under Training Program Area with a brief explanation of what each subtype represents. Our next topic to discuss will be the naming convention for the 3 levels of an ILT. Naming conventions for the ILT. It is important that you keep it simple. Remember, an event is your title, a track can help you organize your course, and the session is set up with your dates and your individual classes. Now let's review naming these items. Example A uses option 2, where the course is the event and the region is the track. If you count all of the characters together in the title, you will notice that they total 47 characters, including spaces. Your example, the event, New Hire Orientation, NHO, has 25 characters. Your track, NHO-R2, has 6 characters, and your session, NHO-R2_315-2013, has 16 characters, for a total of 47 characters. In example B, we use option 1, where the region is the event and the course is the track. If you count all of the characters together in the titles, you will notice that they total 41 characters, including spaces. Example: event, region, 2 has 8 characters. Track, New Hire Orientation, has 20 characters. And your session, NHO-315-2013, has 13 characters, for a combined total of 41 characters in all. You'll notice there are no special characters and no more than a total of 80 characters, including spaces, in all of the titles. Overview of the ILT module. In trying to remember how to structure your ILT modules, remember the concepts of the file cabinet. The event is the cabinet in which you will be storing all of your training or your tracks. The tracks are the folders inside of the file cabinets where you are going to store each of your scheduled and completed sessions. Your sessions are the papers inside of the folders that contain all of the information relating back to your course or track. Your sessions will not only house the date and time for each of your scheduled training, but it will also contain all of the individuals that will be participating in each session, or your enrollees. Thank you so much for participating today in this introductory course. Your next step is to schedule the Instructor Led Training Module.